It's sometimes hard to tell the difference between stubbornness and determination, isn't it? When playing through Celeste, I thought about that line a lot. Stubbornness and determination are absolutely similar concepts, but one is a negative connotation and the other a positive one. Was Madeline's quest to climb the mountain driven by stubbornness or determination? Madeline was really frustrated and anxious in her life. To escape, she decided to climb a mountain. She overcomes obstacles and freaking sends it. I really like this story. You go and climb that mountain. You accomplish something that you want to do. I decided I want to make a video essay about that line in Celeste, the stubbornness determination one. So I looked for an answer and I found the one that I thought the game gave, being there is no difference. Stubbornness and determination are two different descriptors of functionally the same thing. Celeste's lesson is to set your mind to something, then be stubborn, be determined, be whatever, and push through. That's how you grow as a person. But one certain adorable goth version of Madeline really threw a wrench in that idea and got me to look for a better answer, and eventually, a better question. Madeline seems to be quite strongly at odds with Madeline climbing the mountain. When she chases Madeline down in Chapter 2, she seems like an antagonistic force to stop Madeline from reaching the summit. Maybe she is Madeline's doubt, the antagonistic antonym to Madeline's determination. Regardless, she says herself that she's Madeline's reflection, and the mountain is able to give her a physical body. I will get more into my thoughts on Madeline later, but for now it's important to understand that Madeline is a part of Madeline. When Madeline is saying that Madeline can't climb the mountain, that's Madeline speaking. Then Madeline promptly ignores that voice. She keeps pushing forward. Well, this is contradicting the idea that Madeline's determination to climb the mountain is good, because she has to fight herself the whole way. And how can she win a fight with herself? If she wins the fight, someone must have lost it, and that's a title with only one contender. As Madeline keeps climbing, she continues to be at odds with herself. Let's look at Chapter 3, Celestial Resort. This is Oshiro. Oshiro is a lost soul, extremely attached to his former hotel, the namesake Celestial Resort. Madeline is determined to help Oshiro one way or another, and this is good. Helping people is good. I'm not gonna put an asterisk on that. Oshiro is obsessed with getting Madeline to stay in the hotel. While Madeline wants to help Oshiro, she does not want to and will not be staying in that resort. She gets made increasingly uncomfortable by Oshiro and the resort altogether throughout the chapter. In spite of this, she humors Oshiro, and when he shows her the presidential suite hoping Madeline will want to stay there, Madeline appears, insulting Oshiro's resort and breaking a hole in its ceiling so Madeline can escape, much to Madeline's own chagrin. Remember, Madeline is a part of Madeline. Madeline did what Madeline wanted to do and said what Madeline was thinking. The reason that this happened was because throughout the whole chapter, when Madeline was trying to help Oshiro, she was ignoring the voice that said she was uncomfortable. She was pushing it aside, too stubborn to listen. And Madeline's actions are the result of that. So does this mean Madeline shouldn't have helped Oshiro? No. I think Madeline was actually pretty amazing for trying to help Oshiro, and it speaks to her character. But she was trying to fight off and refusing to even address her own thoughts of wanting so desperately to leave. Suppressed thoughts will always escape, and her stubborn attempts to fight herself resulted in her losing miserably. Once she makes it to the roof of the resort, Madeline says the following of Madeline. She only helps people to feed her own twisted ego. This is so tragic to me because, as we know, if Madeline says it, it means Madeline thinks it. And not only that, but for it to escape via that way means that this is likely a thought Madeline was suppressing for quite a while. And it must have been like eating away at her. And of course it's not true. Every other character in the game is able to see that Madeline was trying to help because she's a good person who felt genuine compassion for Oshiro. But she's too busy feeling anything but compassion for herself to realize that. Madeline's determination to climb the mountain continues to force her to fight herself. This fight almost kills her and Theo in Chapter 4, it traps her in a Lovecraftian nightmare in Chapter 5, then in Chapter 6, it starts with a really insightful conversation between Madeline and Theo. One thing that I want to note from this conversation is Madeline says why she chose to climb the mountain in the first place, which is something I touched on at the start of the video. I want to talk about it because it strikes me as similar to the events of Chapter 3, just sort of with a different conclusion. Before the events of the game, Madeline had been suppressing how miserable she was for a long time. She spent way too much time trapped in her own head. But unlike in Chapter 3, she actually listened, at least a little bit, and decided to make a change. It was drastic, going to climb a mountain, and it was honestly more to escape her inner voice instead of addressing it. Trying to escape something that is eating away at you is better than pretending that it isn't. She managed to do something other than ignore herself until she boils over into another panic attack, something Madeline suffers from. Madeline seems opposed to Madeline climbing the mountain throughout the game, or at least the start of it, but I think it was her voice that led Madeline to try going there in the first place. The very start of the game represents Madeline listening to herself for the first time in a hot minute. Madeline was genuinely determined to improve herself. Now that we've discussed a determined Madeline, let's view her at her most stubborn. The perfect word to describe her here is definitely stubborn. She came to the mountain to escape the voices in her head, but now she wants to pretend that they aren't even a part of her. You're not my true reflection. Even if she's speaking gently and in a way that sounds compassionate, she doesn't really listen to a word that Madeline says. Like, we can go back and watch the scene. I think it's like she just doesn't listen at all. She's not determined to climb, not determined to improve. She's stubbornly refusing to accept feelings that she'll never be able to escape. And she knows that, hence what her own reflection tries telling her. So why does Madeline attack Madeline here? I've been saying throughout the video that anything Madeline says or does is actually Madeline doing it, her suppressed thoughts escaping type beat. But Madeline has like at least a little bit of agency in her portrayal in the game. And just look at this here, like the part of Madeline that Madeline has never listened to is being completely shut down. And I really feel for her. She spent her whole life trying to be acknowledged by Madeline, just to be ignored, and she finally gets a chance to speak, given a body by this mountain and a voice that she spent her whole life trying to find. And Madeline calls her obsessive, controlling, and says that she needs to be left behind. You are not my true reflection. Madeline was so determined to climb this mountain. Like, what happened to that? The absolute refusal to change, grow, or even listen is dragging her backwards here. Well, downwards. I would say downward. Madeline does not seem to be winning the fight with herself. Madeline is finally gonna try and talk to Madeline. More importantly, it looks like she's going to try to listen. She realizes that Madeline is scared, which she is. Scared of being ignored forever, something Madeline just said she was planning to do. However, Madeline is determined to give it a shot. When she says that she's going to talk to and try to understand Madeline, that doesn't seem stubborn in the way that she's been so far. The first step of growth is confronting the problem, and Madeline is positively blossoming here. When she first starts speaking, Madeline is not ready to listen. Madeline still has parts of herself that aren't ready to listen, but she's determined to give herself a chance. And she has to fight herself. Fighting herself has not gone well for her so far, but it seems like she's winning. And Madeline offers to try to go away, which is so sad, by the way. Like, something about I'll try. My God. Anyways, if Madeline took that offer up, of course Madeline wouldn't have been able to go away, because the harder you try to suppress the thoughts you don't want to address, the more violently they explode. Madeline would have lost the fight with herself once again, but that's not what happens. Madeline is able to understand herself and offers to actually work with the voice she spent her life ignoring. At the end of the chapter, Madeline decides she is going to try climbing the mountain again. And Madeline voices the thoughts Madeline usually wouldn't address. How the mountain tore them apart last time and the fear that it could happen again. Except Madeline listens, actually listens. She acknowledges those thoughts, and by doing so, stops them from building up until they reach a boiling point. The two of them set off to climb the mountain with newfound determination, but without a stubborn refusal to grow or listen. And it doesn't take long. You get a little snippet of each of the previous levels, with lots of glorious Madeline dialogue sprinkled in between. I want to overanalyze every little example of Madeline actually addressing Madeline. That won't get a little redundant. I'll just highlight a few moments. After the mini Celestial Resort level, Madeline and Madeline talk about Oshiro. Like before, Madeline is very sympathetic to Oshiro, but then Madeline calls him a monster who tried to hurt her. Madeline, you guys ready? Actually listens and addresses the thoughts this time around. She admits that she's angry with him, but reaffirms that he is not a bad person. She gets it! If she wasn't able to do this, she probably would have had another spiral telling herself she only helps people for her ego or something. But that wasn't the case. She addressed the thoughts and avoided being trapped by them. The last conversation they have before the final climb is really beautiful, so I'm going to play it in its entirety. Madeline highlights some of the ideas that I've been discussing, like how she has been trying to leave Madeline behind her whole life. But just the general vibe of this conversation is so healthy. Just none of the antagonizing and stubborn ignorance at the start of the game. It's just two people, it's one person who wants to grow and change and improve, and it's I love this game. And they reach the top. Madeline is scared of losing her body and having to rely on Madeline to listen. She can't go back to that. But Madeline can't go back to that either. They reach the summit together, and Madeline is determined to keep growing and learning and to go even further. She's come a long way from driving off to some mountain in the middle of nowhere to escape the thoughts in her head, and especially a long way from thinking Madeline is something to be left behind. So, how does Celeste instruct you to go about winning a fight with yourself? Give yourself a hug.